Hello, everyone. We're a little out over a week before your first essay is due next Thursday night by 11:59 p.m. I'm sorry I sound a little sick. I've managed to catch myself the Rona. But I've been getting a couple of emails and um, from my online kids, and I'm missing some instruction with my in-person kids at Pleasant Valley. And so I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the essay coming up and just clarify a couple of questions that everybody has had, or several people have had different kinds of questions, and kind of give you a couple of tips on where to go for help, and where you kind of need to be. Now, if you've been following the module task list, which I strongly encouraged you when I gave our initial instructions on each unit to do, you would have come across the journal entries and the different kind of discussions that I had on different parts. We looked at two essays, or you should have looked at two essays. The Normandy Beachhead essay by Ernie Powell, which really was about powerful details, using powerful details, vivid details, to express a memory of a place like Normandy Beach. And then also the Dancing on 74th Street essay, which was all about those strong verbs and verb phrases, and the vivid details of that Catherine Austin Alexander's day that she remembers very clearly in 1962, of being a new transplant to New York, and a day that was really hot outside, and she pushed open her window to try to get some air in her apartment, and she had no air conditioning, obviously, and outside the street had come to life with all of the neighbors had gone out onto the street to just celebrate the day, and they'd taken out their food and their drink, and they were just kind of having an impromptu gathering that turned into this really vivid memory for her of that particular day. So, you looked at those two, and I discussed both of those essays and told you the 7 common moves, the good steps that good writers take to get their points across. And then you also were to be kind of working on the 3 journal entries that were kind of your prep work, or your kind of your drafting process for this essay. So journal 1 had you to make a list of, or to think about an event, a person, place, or event in your memory that you have very strong associations with, or very meaningful to you. And then journal 2 and journal 1 asks you then to kind of think about what are several objects that you could think about that you associate with that person, place, or thing. Journal 2 kicked it up a step, where you pared down your list into either 2 to 3 really strong objects that you could really describe in vivid detail, or maybe multiple objects if you wanted to go that route, that you had a lot that you could write about, and then take that and start developing it into body paragraphs. Then journal 3 just really kind of kicked it up and gave it, or talked about that. So what factor? So, description you learned from our initial lecture. Without meaning, description is just a list. It's no more important or valuable than a grocery list or a to-do list. It's really that meaning that you attach to it, that you try to express to your reader, that really brings it to life and really makes it worth reading about. And that's that so what factor and so what in the seven common moves. So how do you make that connection? How do you take the objects that you have, fully described, and then kick it up a notch to make it meaningful to your reader? Because you can describe something, you can use your five senses, you can use figurative language, you can do all those things, but unless you connect it or attach meaning to it and find a way to get that across to your reader, it won't be valuable. So those three journals kind of helped push you in that direction. After you got that, I wanted you to read the descriptive essay prompt, and which is basically exactly what you've been journaling on. And then you were to write your essay one description. Now, I told you that I also wanted you to go and take a look at the essay resources help desk module to help you learn to set up your paper, to see what successful introductions and conclusions look like, how to organize your essay, balancing details. There's a successful essay checklist where I kind of go over the criterion for grading that I'm going to be using when I grade your essay. And then that MLA format, which is super important to get correct. So hopefully you have been going through all of those processes and you are in drafting mode. You are writing on your essay or turning it into an essay. So I sat down and I've written paragraphs here and there in my journal entries. I'd written paragraphs and just to kind of show you, but I saw several emails, and so what I did was I just basically did a sample descriptive essay. I sat down and wrote it because I've got nothing but time right now to do that, and so I kind of sat down and I put together a sample descriptive essay. And now, obviously, my experiences are different than yours. I'm old enough to be most of your parents. So I'm going to view things a little bit differently with a lot more experience and a lot more gravitas than you are. But that doesn't mean that my stuff is more meaningful, because I've lived longer, I've had more experience. It just means that the scale of I have had a lot of time to reflect on it, and you're going to be moving in that direction. But you won't be able to write, with clarity about your memories until you're older and you understand them through a different lens. But you're going to take those three, those however many objects you decide on. I wrote about two because when I sat down and thought about it, in describing my subject, which was my grandparents and their home, on the two most meaningful things to me were these two objects that I wrote about in my essay. I'm not giving you a limit on the number of objects. It's just usually easier to settle on three so that you can have an introduction and a conclusion, three good body paragraphs without going over massively over that word count that you're required to do. So I'm giving you a sample here, and I just really want to go through just really quickly and point out a couple of things. And if this screencast stops, I'll pick back up in the second part. So the time limit's going to get to me. So you'll notice, number one, that my paper is in MLA format. I have my running header up here in the top right hand corner, which is my last name. I insert the page number so that my pages automatically paginate with each one. If you just type in the number, it will not paginate, and which means that your header will say the same thing on every page. So you always want to make sure that you insert the page number, not just add it. Over to the left hand side, you have your paper header, which is your main header, which should be your name, then my name, then EH101, which is our course title, and then the date in this format. So day, first, month, full spelled out, no abbreviations, and 2021 And that's the correct format for the date. And then you have your title, one return space after that. You'll notice that the entire paper is written in double space, Times New Roman, 12-point font. There are no special fonts, no bold in the title or any special font in the title. Everything is very much in Malay is kind of plain looking. I know you're probably looking at it thinking, oh, how plain. But that's just the way the MLA format. And we're going to be working with both MLA and APA. And the formatting actually doesn't really change that much in regards to APA. So the first thing that you do in your essay is that you have a paragraph of introduction. And I gave you some samples of introductions in that essay resources help desk module. So make sure you take a look at that. What you want to do specifically in your introduction is to introduce your special person, place, or event. And then introduce the objects that you're going to be discussing, and introduce it in a way that makes your reader want to read more, find out more about it, and attaching that meaning right from the beginning, because you want that emotional connection to come through for your reader right from the very beginning. So they say one never knows what he or she has until it's gone, until there's nothing left but the memories. Like most kids growing up, those thoughts never really entered my head. I just lived every day to the fullest until one day I was all grown up. Looking back, I can say with certainty that my greatest childhood memories center around my grandparents and the time that I spent at their house, which was right next door to ours. That house and the precious people who lived inside it have always been the very definition of home to me. When I think of our time together and who they were and what they meant to me, two objects will always come to mind. And I used a colon there to introduce my objects. You can choose not to use that and instead form a sentence with the items in a series, making sure that you use the commas correctly, however you choose to do that. But I left that as my last line, so it works as my working thesis for my paper. My grandmother's cookbook and my granddaddy's record player and radio console. So my introduction, it serves the purpose of introducing my objects. I introduced my overall purpose for my essay, which is to write about my grandparents and their home and how that's home to me, and then how those two, and making that connection to how those objects are the ones that are I'm going to be discussing in my paper. So logically, what follows next is your body paragraphs, and you'll follow the same order that you put forth in your thesis. So I know that I put my thesis as my grandmother's cookbook and my granddaddy's record player. So that's the order. I'm going to talk about my grandmother's cookbook first, and then I'll transition into my grandfather's record player. Okay, so body paragraph 1, you've got to have a topic sentence. So you want your topic sentence to immediately connect your reader to that overall purpose, which is talking about my grandparents and their home and those objects, with the object I'm going to be discussing. So there's no confusion to my reader what this paragraph is going to be about. So mine says, high on the kitchen shelf of my grandparents' kitchen was the lemon yellow Calling All Cooks book, which was my grandmother's favorite cookbook. Okay, you can choose to set up your topic sentence, your body paragraph topic sentence, in any way that you want. That there's not a specific formula. It just needs to include the object you're going to be discussing, so it's very clear for your reader, and it needs to make that connection back to the thesis. There's no question that this paragraph is going to be about that cookbook, and that this cookbook is part of what connects me to those memories of my grandmother and my grandparents and their home. So I'm going to stop this one here, and I'll pick up on part 2 with the next steps.